Are you ready to branch out, to take a leap of faith, to love yourself and others fully? Then let go of whatever no longer serves you to take action now on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Erica will energize and excite you to power up your passionate dream that sets your soul on fire. With Erica's E3 approach, equipping, empowering, and enlightening yourself so you can be yourself for yourself. Get ready and get rooted to live a life without regrets, without what ifs, without should haves, and especially without empty feelings from a life unexplored. This hit show helps you build powerful and intentional roots to live it up, love it up, and let it go. Get fearlessly ready and powerfully rooted in your yes with your host, Erica Gifford Mills, and be fearless about your more and stand in your yes. Now on Get Rooted Radio.
Welcome, everyone. I am Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio, living it up, loving it up, letting it go, right here on Transformation Talk Radio. A big shout out, as always, to my producer today, Moxie. Moxie, how are you doing?
I am doing so great, Erica. Thank you for asking.
Well, I know I'm doing okay, but there are so many times where I feel like I am totally burnt out. And that's what we're talking about today. And the episode is titled Burnout Recovery and the Sandwich Generation. And we all know that burnout is a reality for a majority of the workforce today. And my guest, Carrie Severson, and I will engage in a truly authentic, candid, and heartfelt conversation about burnout and how to move through it with ease. In addition, we will discuss the one generation that finds themselves in a deeper level of burnout due to new caregiving responsibilities, and that is Generation X, or also known as the sandwich generation. But let me tell you first about my guest. Carrie Severson is a burnout author, speaker, business owner, wife, bonus mom, and lives her life somewhere between winging it and manifesting it. Her memoir, Unapologetically Enough, and the follow-up, The Enoughness Method, are big hits with women because they explore what saying yes to yourself looks like during and after burnout, and all through the lens of enoughness. Adding to her list of books is her latest creation, the Burnout Recovery Affirmation Cards, which I need to get, and they're available wherever you can buy her books. Thank you so much, Carrie, for being on the show today. I know I am going to learn a lot from our discussion.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Hope I'm able to provide a bunch of tips for you and the listeners.
Awesome. So tell me how you became an expert at burnout recovery.
Well, I burned out for the first time about a decade ago, before burnout was the thing to talk about. The only person back then talking about it actually was Ariana Huffington. So I woke up on my 35th birthday after running a nonprofit for a number of years that had grown nationally in a short amount of time. And I got to the point where I was super fatigued, resentful, had put on a ton of weight, isolating myself, had total apathy for what I was doing. And I gave all my responsibilities to the board of directors, went off to just basically sit outside, watch the clouds, listen to the birds, turn off my phone, turn off my computer. And I just allowed my body to feel all the things that I had been shoving down for so long. And it was like an adrenaline crash and tons of emotion. But after, days of that, I was able to hear clearly and think clearly, and not totally. I mean, it comes in patches, but on my 35th birthday, after weeks of doing that, I woke up and the first thing that flashed across my face was a term I had never heard before, which was burnout. So I opened up my nightstand drawer, grabbed my phone, turned it on for the first time in almost a month, typed the word burnout in a search engine, and the first definition that came up was from Psychology Today, and it said, this again was a decade ago, it said emotional or psychological an emotional or psychological disorder caused from overexposure to stress at the workplace. Super simple, one sentence. Now it's much bigger. But back then I was like, this is exactly what I'm feeling. And I spent a number of months figuring out how to move myself out of that space because nobody was talking about it. It's not anywhere close to as researched then as it is now.
Yeah.
So I had to piece it together myself. And being a writer, I've been a storyteller for 30 years, professional writer. I went back to my roots of storytelling and I started writing about my experience for the Huffington Post, for Thrive Global, getting on stage, sharing my journey. And as I did that, more and more people started coming forward saying, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm feeling. I totally understand this. Thank you so much. And I decided to create my memoir, my first memoir, Unapologetically Enough, out of demand for talking about burnout, what it looks like to recover from it, because we weren't talking about it. My book came out in 2022, and the response from that was crazy. Women started calling it a mental health book, which I did not expect. I didn't know that. I thought I created something about self-esteem, but mental health is great, and I loved it, so I ran with it. And as I started to promote it towards that audience, the Fortune 500 industry started noticing it. Women started buying it, taking it to their bosses, and before you know it, I'm on conference calls with big companies asking to come in and do seminars, keynotes, half-day workshops, virtual, in person. And it's how it started was my own experience. I wrote about my journey. I put a book out, kept on following this intuitive nudge I got. And before you know it, I'm putting together half-day seminars for employees who are burnt out and needing help to get out of it.
And I think that's what's important. It's that saying that your survival story is going to be somebody else's survival guide, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what's so important about telling your story and being that storyteller, as I know you know from doing it for so many years. But what is the difference, or what is the logical progression between stress and burnout?
Right. I love this. I talk about this a lot, actually. So everyone experiences stress. I mean, that's super, super hard. The definition of burnout really is chronic, unmanaged stress. And so you're running your day to day, you've got all these things to do. You're, I don't want to use the word incapable, but you're unaware of how to turn that off at the end of the day and come back to it refreshed. And so we leave work with things unattended. We go to a household where, we could have things that we have to do there. And going back to this sandwich generation, a lot of us are experiencing this 9 to 5 and then a 5 to 9, where we have caregiving responsibilities now too. The difference between stress and burnout really is in this coping mechanism of being able to move out of fight or flight, or out of a state of stress, panic, into a state of relaxation somehow, some way, even if it's for an hour a day, being able to turn it off, not numb out, just turn off the stress and take care of ourselves, going back the next day, picking up where we left off. If we aren't able to do that, we compile stressful days on top of stressful days on top of stressful days until we finally get to a state of burnout. So unresolved stress will always lead to a state of burnout.
And I think that's an important note for listeners, is that stress is normal, right? Everybody has some sort of stress. Yep. It's just leaving it unattended, leaving it unaddressed can cause even more physical, mental, emotional damage, right? Mm-hmm. We're all tied mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Everything is kind of tied together. And if you don't address the underlying issue, you're going to see problems in those areas.
Yeah. And there's no real research to show that. I mean, the concept of it, and this research shows prolonged exposure to unmanaged stress. That's what the definition is now. So it could be, looking at COVID. COVID's hit 2020. By the end of 2020, burnout was on the rise. Unresolved, it's coming down a little bit 4 years later, but we're still talking about it. I burnt out, recognizing I was burnt out several years into it. But I kept on going. I kept that rat race going. I just kept on hoping I just need one thing to turn this around. Everything will get better. So I'm just going to keep on pushing forward. And it didn't help.
Yeah. And I think that is just when this happens, it's kind of like that chasing that happiness, right?
Yep.
It's when this happens, then I can settle down. Well, when I get this done, I can settle down. And if you never take that break, you're going to always run into it. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk about the enoughness method and give listeners about more information about what that actually is. But before we go, Carrie, tell folks how they can reach you, where they can find your books, all that fun stuff.
So I'm at carrieseverson.com. Contact me over there. Author Carrie Severson is my social media. Books are sold anywhere, you can get books, the Big A store, the B&N store. I know a number of boutiques have picked up the affirmation cards, the memoir, and the workbook. But yeah, I would love to hear from you.
Great, thank you. You are listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any portion of today's episode, you can catch it on getrootedradio.com. That's getrootedradio.com. Don't forget to subscribe online to receive the latest news, events, specials, and words of encouragement. Go to getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Carrie Severson. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
So during the last segment, listeners learned about how you came about to write your first book, Unapologetically Enough. Mm-hmm. And during this segment, I really want to explore really the basis for your next is the enoughness method.
Right.
So what is the enoughness method?
So I came up with the enoughness method during my burnout recovery, and I found 3 things that helped me the most: cold therapy, cold water, box breathing, and quick trip outside, taking deep breaths in and out, and looking at engaging my senses. So my enoughness method, and what this is 1 minute in the cold shower, 2 minutes of box breath, and 3 minutes outside, or 3 minutes outside, like 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. But that is really it. The enoughness method is this little tiny package of 6 minutes of self-care every day to reframe your nervous system, retrain your nervous system out of fight or flight and into a state of relaxation. And cold therapy, box breathing, and sunshine, natural sunlight, breeze, breathing outdoors, allowing your body to relax are 3 quick, scientifically known tools to support your nervous system.
And we all have 6 minutes in a day.
Right.
Like, come on, we pick up our phone and scroll for way more than that. So, So cold water therapy, right? Easy enough to do. Get in your shower. You don't even have to go to a special place for that. Yep. Listeners, I know there's lots of, the cold water baths and all those places, but just jump in your shower. Mm-hmm. Now, box breathing. So for listeners who don't know what box breathing is, can you give an example of what that is?
Right. Yep. So box breath is the breathing technique that the Navy SEALs learned to take themselves out of really crazy, stressful situations. So exhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts, inhaling for 4 counts, and holding for 4 counts. So it is a 4, 4, 4, 4 pattern. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold, inhale, hold, exhale, hold. And you're going to do that a couple of times through. I personally try to do it 8 times. That's usually 2 minutes for me. And sometimes I'll do it outdoors. And so I take my box breathing outdoors. I'll sit down, crisscross applesauce somewhere, and just spend 5 minutes outside, totally allowing my thoughts to sort of pass me by. And then I'll move into box breath.
That's perfect. Again, no special equipment needed,
Nope.
folks. And I think that's what sometimes people think they need, the fancy things to get, but it's the basics, getting back to the basics and having that outside time where you have that grounding, right? You're in nature. And it doesn't mean you have to go in the middle of the woods, but when I say in nature, I just mean outside, like you said, with the sunlight, with the fresh air, with the, all the senses that you can, what's that? The wind, feeling the wind, if it's windy, feeling the sun, feeling the earth, the grass,
the animals.
Yep.
As we're talking about this, so I'm originally from Wisconsin, but I live in Arizona. And so I've got these two extreme weather situations happening. And so while I was creating this and coming up with this, I was in the dead of winter. And so I would go and I would walk and I would outside in Wisconsin and I would listen to my feet on the snow and the crunching of the snow. And so, I mean, like 90 seconds one way, 90 seconds another way. And that's all I did was listen to the sound of my own footsteps. And then I would get inside and, like shiver and I have to undress in all the layers. And breathing was easier for me because I just done this, exercise outside. The cold therapy was something I discovered by accident, again in Wisconsin, as this was happening. And I would get sometimes overheated. And so I would take a chunk of snow and rub it on my neck, rub it on my face. And afterwards, I felt good. So I started looking into it. And I found that like guys like Tony Robbins were doing it and all of these really successful people. And then the trend of the cold plunge came, but I had been doing it already. So I actually have ice rollers that I hand out in my seminars. And I tell people, if you're working from home, pop this in the freezer, rub it around on your neck because you want to hit your vagus nerve, which is the nerve that's running from your brain down your whole body. This is the nerve that reminds your body that you're actually not being chased by a tiger, and it's okay to lean back and take a beat and relax. And so I'll encourage people in between their meetings to get the ice roller out, rub it on your neck for 60 seconds and let that be,
And for those who are saying, wait, this is way too easy. Wait, I'm just doing 3, 2, 1 or 1, 2, 3. This can't be this easy with not having to go get some special equipment, not having to go, for a 3-week retreat someplace. Why does it work?
Well, first of all, I think when we're burnt out, we're in such a state of stress that adding a lot of things to our plate is it's not comprehend. It doesn't work. And I think people stay in a state of burnout because they're so afraid of the things that they have to add to their life in order to come out of burnout. But burnout is a nervous system issue. And what we have to do is retrain our nervous system to believe that we are safe, we are at peace, that we're not being, hunted. That's really what it comes down to. Our nervous systems are still programmed to believe that we're out in the caveman's, being chased with spears and stuff. So all of these, that's kind of my philosophy is, I loved taking a hiatus. I loved exploring, but that was a decade ago, before I got married, before I had bonus kids, before my husband was diagnosed with cancer and I became a caregiver. I don't believe that I would be able to come out of burnout now the way I did then. So I had to create for myself these 60-second intervals of reminding my nervous system that I'm safe. And so I looked for things that support our vagus nerve, that activate your vagus nerve, that calm us down. That's really what we need. We need to be able to calm our bodies down. So cold therapy works, breathing techniques work. I can list off a ton, but the enoughness method really is just this nice little box package that you can do 6 minutes in the morning, 6 minutes at night. It'll frame your day much easier.
think that is, I'm not saying that this is the same as New Year's resolutions or goal setting, but sometimes people try to go so big or they try to do so many things and then they fail at all of them because it's instead of slowly adding on, right? So you think about somebody who says, I want to drink more water, eat healthier, go to the gym, do all these things instead of I'm going to take it one step at a time. I'm going to slowly add more water. Okay, when I have that mastered, I'm going to slowly add this. And it's when you get back to those basics and you learn what is going to work for you and why it works, and you don't try to go overboard. Those are the basis on what we need to do.
Yep. In the enoughness method, I share those 3 simple steps, but I provide additional things like coloring opportunities, because coloring is a great mindful technique. A number of journal prompts for you to recognize how you got into burnout and why it's important that you move out of it. Some self-assessment tools, because we don't always recognize we're in a state of burnout. And a number of other tools that I give out at seminars and workshops and things like that. In the event that cold therapy isn't something that you're excited to do, because it is, people are like, no, too far. So I'm like, all right, well, let's try this technique instead. And so there's a number of other opportunities for you, all free, all engaging your body, your vagus nerve. Yeah, it's fun. And oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I keep going.
I was going to say that I created the enoughness method based on the demand I got from corporations, companies, the healthcare network. I do a lot in that space. And I saw the opportunity to provide something for people not in that environment. Parents, stay-at-home moms, not dads, teachers are really burnt out. Students are even sharing that they're burnt out. The concept of burnout being focused on employment in a professional manner, I think has changed since COVID. And the research shows that burnout hits different generations. So it's something that millennials, Gen Z experiences all the way up still to baby boomers.
So my question is, why the term enoughness?
Yeah. So when I was recovering from burnout a decade ago, what I noticed in my journals was I was always complaining that I didn't have enough. I didn't have enough time. I didn't have enough help. I didn't have enough resources. And I looked at that word as a 4-letter word for a really long time until I was able to embrace it, recognize it as an abundance, and was used it as a healing technique to reframe how I saw myself as enough. And when you're in a state of burnout, sometimes usually all the time, we get this apathy going. We get this like brain fog, and it's really hard to recognize the good in our life. It's hard to recognize ourselves as enough because sometimes we feel like I've done everything I can. I am totally resentful of this employer. I don't have anything left to give. And now I've got to go home and do it all over again. And we don't feel a lot of times that we are enough. And so the enoughness method is a tool to use in burnout. It does focus on your nervous system. And as you start to heal that, and as you start to feel better, emotional healing will start. The brain fog will lift, and you'll start to see yourself differently.
Well, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about that sandwich generation that we mentioned earlier. Before we go, Carrie, tell listeners how they can reach you. CarrieSeverson.com. Head over there. There's a contact form. If you're interested in telling me your story, getting to know me, I'd love to hear from you. Awesome. I'm Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio, living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Don't forget to visit getrootedradio.com to listen to a replay of this episode, sign up for helpful tips, and learn about upcoming events. That's getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Carrie Severson. Carrie, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
So during the last two segments, we've talked about burnout, stress, and the enoughness method. During this segment, I really want to talk about the sandwich generation and their unique position that they are in that may lead to additional burnout. So, Carrie, why is this generation special or more at risk, and why?
Right. So the sandwich generation is another nickname that Gen X has received. We got a lot of them. Latchkey kids, the MTV generation, the forgotten generation. But we're now being called the sandwich generation because those of us from the 70s and the 80s, if we are parents, we typically have kids still at home. And because our parents are baby boomers, 70s, 80s, and the price of home care and nursing facilities, long assisted living, those kind of situations are so expensive. A lot of us are facing having to bring our parents back into the house or going to their house. And so the sandwich generation is in a unique position where we still have kids at the house and now we're taking care of the elderly. And so some people are saying we have 9 to 5s and 5 to 9s, which does definitely have us burning the wick at both ends for sure.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you're still you got to take care of your children, take care of parents, grandparents, whatever it might be, aunts, uncles, and then also trying to take care of yourself.
Right.
And typically that goes on the back burner.
Mm-hmm.
And what are we looking at as far as, I don't want to say correcting that, because I mean, in many cultures, it's just your parents will eventually come back and they took care of you. It's your turn to take care of them. But how do we resolve that burnout, resentment? Because I think sometimes that can also lead to, friction between
absolutely
the living situation, the resentment, and all the feelings that we talked about in a normal burnout.
Right. So it is incredibly challenging because caregiving burnout is tends to be a life or death kind of scenario where if we let that go at all, not show up fully for the care of others, it could potentially lead to life-threatening situation or worse, right? Yeah. So my own experience as a caregiver when my husband was dealing with cancer and having to advocate for him, not knowing, I thought I knew what caregiving was. I thought I knew what advocacy was. And then it came time to actually, go toe to toe with healthcare professionals and kick people off his team. And the need for quiet, stillness, deep self-care is so important, which is why I look at these little nervous system tips, tricks, literally 60 seconds at a time, because sometimes the only space you have in your day is walking from point A to point B. And so looking at breathing techniques, what you can do for your body to keep your body in a state of relaxation as long as possible. It's really important. I will say that, there's family caregiving is becoming almost a national crisis. And so it's getting looked at with a different lens. Possible new bills are coming. I think the last count, there was something that was done by AARP a couple of years ago that said there were 50 million family caregivers. And that will continue to increase as our population gets older and we're running out of space, to support them in facilities. So it really comes down to us and how dedicated we are to our overall health. And we have to make it a priority because nobody else is going to do this for us, right? So
Yeah,
I start my day a little bit earlier now with stillness, with quiet, give myself like 15 minutes, just a simple cup of coffee and allow my thoughts. I do cold therapy every day. I do move my body, not really strenuously if I can, but I make sure I get outside, get some fresh air. That vitamin D is really important. Just these little tiny habits that we have to create for ourselves so that we do show up fully in both of those spaces, right? As the family caregiver and, whatever you're doing in your day to day to provide for your family, whatever, responsibilities you have.
Well, and without sounding cliche, but you can't pour from an empty cup, right? If there's nothing inside you to give, you can't give. And if you don't take that time,
yeah,
not only will you have the physical, mental, emotional, but you're not going to give to the other person who also needs your help in that care. And that's why it is important. And again, so if you missed the last segment, go back and re-listen. But for those who are listening right now or joining us live, those 3 techniques, again, that you have in the enoughness method are cold therapy. And like you said, just jump in your cold shower. You don't need this special equipment. The box breathing, the 4-4-4-4, the inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, inhale for 4. And then the getting out in nature, sunlight, really using all those senses outside.
Yep. Allowing the fresh vitamin D, allowing the fresh breeze on you will literally feel your body just sort of relax. Your muscles will just sort of loosen.
And then again, that's what 3, 2, 1 or 1, 2, 3, right? It's not a lot of time, but spending that, we all have at least 6 minutes, or if you do it twice a day, 12 minutes in a day. That's less than 1 snooze. If you snooze, like don't snooze. You can even do some of it while you're in bed, right?
Yeah.
Before you wake up and just jump out and try to start your day.
Yeah. I used to, I've gone through so many different phases of personal development, things that you're grateful for and journaling. And those are things I still look at, but burnout is such a different issue where, again, it's a nervous system issue. You have to address your nervous system. Just pretending it's not there won't help. Taking a long vacation isn't going to help because the second you plug back into your real life, it's going to be there waiting for you. So it is something that you have to get into a habit of doing for yourself. Cold therapy is my number 1 favorite, absolutely. And I recommend this to everyone I meet. I think it would be incredibly important for the sandwich generation if given the opportunity between, if you are a full-time employee and you're off at X job and you come home, you've got very little time between unpacking whatever your day-to-day life looks like and then stepping into that caregiving role. If you can give yourself 2 minutes to get in a cold shower, allow it to shock it's actually called the boomerang effect. It shocks your system into a state of relaxation. The cold water shocks you. And it does. It'll take your breath away. My breath gets sucked out and then I kind of freeze for a second and then I scream and then I laugh. And that all happens within a matter of like 15 seconds. And I know it's worked. I feel better literally instantly. If you can give yourself that little leeway, you will feel so much better. It's almost like you're, changing from Clark Kent to Superman or Lois Lane to, I don't know, she wasn't a superhero, but it's that little thing that you need. And I highly recommend it. It works every time.
I love that. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to finish out the show with tips, tricks, techniques to avoid burnout.
Okay.
This is Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. To Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any of the information during the last segments, go to getrootedradio.com to listen to the replay or listen to other episodes. Don't forget to subscribe, sign up for tips and special events and pricing for upcoming coaching sessions at getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Carrie Severson. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Tell listeners how they can learn more about you, contact you, and get a copy of your books.
Sure. CarrieSeverson.com is where I'm housed, and my books are actually all there. You can just browse through and see, click on the link. It'll take you to a retailer that has them.
Wonderful. In the remaining time, I want to give listeners some tips, tricks, techniques to avoiding burnout and how to recover from burnout if they didn't catch it in time.
Right.
So I guess first, maybe what are some signs?
Right.
And then how can we avoid it? And then how can we get into that recovery mode?
Okay. So burnout does feel like it creeps up on you. But again, the definition is prolonged, unmanaged stress, right? And burnout the concept really started with this professionalism, where you're going to a place of employment, you have unmanaged stress day after day after day after day. Burnout is going to hit you. Um, I personally take that concept of place of employment a little loose because I don't know a single stay-at-home parent who doesn't feel like that's their place of employment, right? So I look at parenthood as employment as well. So take that definition as you will. But symptoms, apathy is one of the bigger ones where eventually we just were flat. The emotion that comes across as flatness. We just don't have anything else to give. We do tend to have insomnia associated with burnouts. There is a constant rat race going, so we tend to be more anxious than depressed. Depression can be a symptom. More than likely, though, depression will lead to burnout because we tend to come down, and then things start to fall through the cracks, and depression or burnout can oftentimes be a result of depression. Weight gain is highly likely during burnout. So we see some of these signs as they're coming on, right? Belly issues, your digestive system is a big one, because a lot of times we're so stressed that we're just eating whatever we can grab, typically things in boxes and bags, and it's going to go right to our bellies and cause some issues there. So I like to look at that list first to see where you're at, and if you can kind of scale there, chances are you're already in burnout, right? So prevention, we're looking at open communication in the workplace. We want, well, let me back up and I'll say that the things that oftentimes lead to burnout, this prolonged exposure, unmanaged stress. A lot of times the research shows that our unmanaged stress is due to poor communication from a manager, not being kept in the light on changes in the workplace. Oftentimes we feel resentful that after COVID, we were asked to go back to the workplace, but we don't have the same luxuries that we would at home where we don't have access to X, Y, and Z, right? Or we're not given childcare, we're not given gas money, all these, we're not given a nice cafeteria. Some of these things have led to resentment. So prevention, from a prevention purpose, we're looking at creating a better relationship with managers, open communication, regular meetings. And sometimes you'll have to, if you're in that middle space, you'll have to prompt it and ask for it. Feeling appreciated is a really big one for people in the workplace again. So if we're feeling like our skills are going unnoticed, asked to take on a different project or be moved into a different department where you do feel like you are a better fit. So some of this from a prevention perspective, we have to take a little responsibility on our own and find out where we really fit best. Does that make sense?
Oh, it's the self-awareness, right? To see what are you creating yourself because you're not saying yes, or you are saying yes too often and you're not saying no enough, right? That boundary management, but also having that open, not being afraid to having that open dialogue. And that's not always on you if you have maybe a toxic work environment, but if you have to advocate for yourself because no one else is going to do it for you. Yeah.
Sometimes, and when I'm doing these seminars and stuff, I'll get asked for ideas for better communication. So actually, for those of you who are listening who are managers of places of employment, some things to make it a little bit easier in the work environment where oftentimes it feels intuitive or maybe logical to have big meetings on Mondays, but research shows that Mondays are like the least favorite day in the workplace. And because we feel like we have to belong, sense of belonging, our Mondays are usually the place where we'd like to get caught up and plugged back into our work family, right? So
Yeah.
some things to consider are rather than a big meeting about what has to happen that week, maybe do a 15-minute water cooler session where everyone just gets a popcorn round robin. What do we do? Let's plug back in. Let's get back together. And then we can go off and have a big meeting on Tuesday. Some of those adjustments might need to be put in place to prevent burnout or even help people in a state of recovery.
That idea, because it is let's try to ease into the week without being slammed right off the bat.
Something I did a decade ago was another tip I have. I blocked off my noon to one in my calendar, so nobody can ever book. I've done this for a decade now. Nobody can ever book that time with me. That is my time to do whatever I want. So if I am going to take go to a doctor's appointment, if I am going to go for a walk, if I am going to have lunch, I'm going to take a nap, whatever I'm going to do because I work at home. I do that. I still do that. If I choose to still work, that's my choice. But I also monitor it on the back end where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to work till 5. I'm not going to work till 6, right? So I have some space in my day. When I'm out and leading these seminars, one of the questions I'll ask is like, how many of you actually take a lunch break? How many of you remember to fill up your water bottle? How many of you get a chance to use the restroom? And so depending on the industry, some of these, they sound harmless, but some of them, don't use the restroom once they walk inside the building. Others never stop to eat. Some scroll while they're eating lunch at their desk. And so recreating some of these habits that we have for ourselves is necessary.
Yeah.
And those could be either a preventative component or a recovery. So if you are eating at your desk, leave your phone where it is, take your lunch, go outside. If it's a nice day. If it's not a nice day, go sit by a window so you can actually see, right? You can see nature.
Yeah.
The scrolling thing is a numbing habit. And so we want to feel our bodies. We want to remind our bodies we're safe, not keep our mind occupied with whatever is going outside. Another tip is if you're on meetings back to back to back, see if you can take a couple minutes at the top of the hour or a few minutes at the bottom and 5-minute bio-human break where we're filling up our water bottle, we're grabbing some almonds or an apple or something, and we're using the restroom. See if we can fit those in between the meetings, because those things are really important, keeping our brain, keeping our body, staying hydrated. All those things are preventative, but they're also restorative. So
Yeah.
a lot of the burnout recovery components can be considered preventative as well. But the big preventative component is making sure that we feel acknowledged, that we have open communication, that we have good dialogue, so that we don't move into a state of resentment or apathy.
I think some of them listeners might be thinking, well, those are so simple. But as you said, how many of us took a lunch break today, or ate at our desk while we were checking email, or sat and had our coffee and yet we're checking email, or, it's having those actual breaks. You think about it, mindful eating, right? To actually enjoy your food, to actually, that's going to help your GI, your digestive system and everything. But it is so important that you take those steps. Yeah. It's the self-care and self-love. It's the self part, right? Mm-hmm. No one's going to do it for you. No one's going to say, did you go to the bathroom today? Did you drink all your water today? Did you, right. You have to do that. So yeah. I appreciate this, Carrie. And so again, check out carrieseverson.com, right? To get your books, to check all this stuff out. And I want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And I want to thank you all for tuning in to Get Rooted Radio. If you missed any part of today's episode or want to listen again, go to getrootedradio.com for the podcast. And don't forget to tune in the first and third Monday of each month at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, and 2 p.m. Pacific, right here on Transformation Talk Radio. Before I sign off, ask yourself if you are living a rooted life. If the answer is no, set up your free Empower Hour call with me. No charge, no obligations. Go to getrootedradio.com to find out how I can help you take action now. And if you are ready to live, love, and let go, then my new award-winning book and companion workbook, The Rooted Life, Live, Love, Let Go, is for you. Check out the bundle deal at getrootedradio.com under the author section and order your signed copy today. And one final message. If you are hurting or need help, please know the world is a better place with you in it. Reach out for assistance. Call or text or chat the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Again, that's 988. Hours are 24/7 and the cost is free. Or text HOME, that's HOME, to 741-741 to reach a trained crisis counselor through Crisis Text Line. It's a global not-for-profit organization. And again, it's free, 24/7, confidential. Thank you for tuning in. Have an amazing day. Know that you are loved. Let go and let God. And I am looking forward to the next time on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Visit getrootedradio.com if you have missed any part of this hit show, and tune in on transformationtalkradio.com to live fearlessly in your more and powerfully rooted in your unlimited yes. For more information and to work with Erica directly, visit getrootedradio.com. That's getrootedradio.com, and get ready to live it up, love it up, and let it go.